realized it wasn't worth putting baseball fields and stadiums there. It was actually worth making it.
Well, it's a perfect property for growing food. What are you doing with that concrete barn?
Well, actually, the concrete barn is being renovated into sort of an event and agricultural center is the plan, and then we're building a new barn out back further back in the pasture for education and processing.
And is the house still there?
It is currently.
Everything in the basement?
Yes.
Have you seen that? Wow.
Yeah, we've seen it all, yeah.
Wow. This is amazing. Now I know what happened.
President Maria?
Just, did you know that the folks that used to own that she was a former legislator?
I did not personally.
Yeah.
Thank you for your testimony.
Okay, you're welcome, thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to testify directly on LG 1284? Seeing none?
Okay, this closes the hearing on 1284, and we will open the hearing on 1291, an act to promote food but just to present your bill. That's right, Senator Langley. I don't think we have another. Okay. No. Yeah, I know. Senator Langley. We'll do 1376, an act to establish a local food producers and processors to consumers pilot program. Processors to consumers pilot program.
Thank you so much we got just a slight break in education.
Gosh, I didn't think you ever took a break down there.
We don't. Just like you guys know.
For those of you that don't know, Senator Langley is the chair of Education and Cultural Affairs, and that's my second committee. And when I have a spare moment, I'm down there in that other committee.
We both share that kind of schedule. So, but it's great to get out of your own committee and to get around and visit other committees, and either just to listen or every now and then have an idea that you think might warrant some hearing in another committee. And that's why I'm here today. Senator Edgecombe and Representative Hickman, and esteemed members of the Agricultural Conservation and Forestry Committee. I'm Brian Langley. I'm proud to represent Senate District 7, which is comprised of 27 towns in Hancock County. And I'm before you today to present LD 1376, an act to establish a local food producers and processors to consumers pilot program. This is my fourth term in the legislature and third term in the Senate. And over this time period, I've learned to listen. I've twice chaired the Education Committee, where we hear over 120 bills each session. And you all have experienced countless hours of testimony, with so much testimony being redundant and at times mind-numbing. Throughout the countless hours of testimony provided in my committee, my single goal is to find the thread of truth that may be hidden in the testimony. That thread of truth that will help me find a clear path to creating good legislation. This bill is a reflection of that process, listening to all sides of this issue and pulling out those threads of truth, massaging them, and then weaving those threads to create a balanced piece of legislation that meets the needs of my constituents and the needs of people in the state of Maine. This legislation draws its strength from Maine Revised Statutes Title 7 Part 1A. I've included a copy at the end of the testimony, but just want to quote one section. The survival of the family farm is of special concern to the people of the state, and the ability of the family farm to prosper while producing an abundance of high-quality food and fiber deserves a place of high priority in the determination of public policy. And this legislation, before you further, draws its strength from Title 7, Section 1B. I've included the full text at the end, again, but would just like to quote the following excerpt. The legislature further finds the preservation of rural life and values in the state to be the joint responsibility of all public agencies, local, state, and federal, whose policies and programs substantially impact the economy and general welfare of people who reside in rural Maine, such as the development and implementation of programs that assist in the maintenance of family farms, provide specialized opportunities for education, technical training, and improve health and nutrition. So these are pretty powerful statements and clearly articulate legislative intent, and I would submit that they are threads of truth. This legislation further draws its strength from overwhelming support and passage of local food ordinances in communities in my district and other communities in the state. Citizens voiced their strong support of the farming families in our communities. They voiced their trust in those farming families, knowing full well that the farmers are feeding their own families the very same food they are selling. Citizens know full well that when they look a farmer in the eye as they make the purchase, that they are shaking the hand that feeds them. I've included the full text of the local food ordinance in the end of my testimony, but just like to quote this little excerpt. And we, the people, and insert the name of your town, have the right to produce, process, sell, purchase, and consume local foods, thus promoting self-reliance, the preservation of family farms and local food traditions. We recognize that family farms, sustainable agriculture practices, and food processing by individuals, families, and non-corporate entities offers stability to our rural way of life by enhancing the economic, environmental, and social wealth of our community. So these are the threads of truth that exist both in the state statutes and local food ordinances: preservation of family farms and impact on the economy. And these are the fundamental building blocks of this legislation. Now, no one can deny there's a role and need for governance and oversight in order to promote public health and safety. Title 7, Section 1B, as written above, says that the preservation of rural life be the joint responsibility of all public agencies, local, state, and federal. And I took this to heart as I worked to construct this legislation. The concern of public safety has been in the past a deciding factor, at least one that I've heard voiced, in the failure of previous legislation looking to expand local food ordinances into statewide policy. And I get that. I understand from a public safety point of view, sitting atop of a statewide regulatory agency, kind of far away from the fields, that the policies have to be statewide. I taught food safety for nearly 30 years as part of a culinary arts program, and I am a certified instructor. I have deep knowledge of the factors that contribute to a foodborne illness, as well as where the critical control points for preventing illness are. These codes and regulations and the inspections that follow are crucial and necessary for protecting the public and feeding the masses. However, small family farms selling in face-to-face transactions to me are in a different category. Many of the model food code regulations are to combat potential hazards that arise from the system of transportation and multiple middlemen in our food supply chain. Time and temperature violations account for many foodborne illness outbreaks. It's a much different playing field when a local farm sells items that are hours old rather than days or weeks old. Nevertheless, for me, the thread of truth that governance is needed to protect the public health is very real and important. And at this point, I apologize for being so long-winded. Generally, I'm done by now, but I want you to understand my thought process for developing this legislation. The parsing out the threads of truth takes a bit of time. By the way, I didn't develop this in a vacuum. I've had many meetings with local farmers, some town officials, met with our local health meeting partners, and I've used all of their input to write the legislation. This legislation looks to create a pilot program encompassing the 5 contiguous towns in my district that have passed local food ordinances. Towns are Blue Hill, Brooklyn, Brooksville, Penobscot, and Sedgwick. The inclusion of these towns in the pilot is due to their public support of their family farms. I found this support to be compelling and be representative of we the people. In fact, it's the strong public support that leads me to take on this issue in the first place. The pilot program hinges on the creation of a local food policy council made up of members of the community that include but are not limited to farmers, town representatives, citizens, community health representatives, etc., with the purpose of acting as a local governance entity. In essence, kind of a throwback to the days of when I think the Grange fulfilled this role. Nothing is really new around this place. Just we circle back on it to some times past. I've enlisted the help of former Representative Jim Schatz to convene and facilitate the creation of a local foods council. Representative Schatz is in fact a member of local Grange. This local council has the potential to create a space for the dissemination of best practices and a space for young farmers to be tutored by long-standing established farmers. And I see the pressure of peers to be more effective in promoting best practices than maybe a state agency. So this would enable food processors in the pilot program to be exempt from state licensure and inspection requirements with respect to the production and processing of local food for sale to consumers, with the caveats listed there. And the success of the pilot will be in part due to the partnership between the Department of Agriculture and the participating members of this local foods policy council and farmers themselves. Their assistance, their guidance, and data collection is critical. In conclusion, I believe I've identified what I see as the threads of truth from both sides of this issue, woven an outside-the-box approach, and I want to give you an opportunity to hold fast to your strongly held beliefs and still support this concept of local governance. Thank you for your patience. I really do appreciate it. I'm glad to answer any questions you might have. And I really do appreciate your time here today.
Well, we don't, Senator, we don't run the clock on legislators. If we want them to take the time that they need, because they represent about 38,000. Each senator represents about 38,000 citizens.
And I didn't bring them all here with me today, so I know you'll appreciate that taken into consideration.
Representative Chapman and then Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator, for introducing this bill. And I am co-sponsored, but I do have a question for you. I wondered if you've had a chance to think about how this program should be evaluated, knowing that it has a sunset, and presumably when that sunset gets close, one would want to know whether to continue it, expand it, get rid of it, whatever, and that suggests some metric, and I'm wondering if you've given some thought to that.
I don't think I've drilled down into the way that metrics are collected in such a way as I know that you have a real propensity and a skill for. And I don't mean that in jest. Representative Chapman and I work on a lot of issues together, and this is very science-based. But I think in working with the department, I would see the data collection piece would be how's it working, how's the local Foods Council working and monitoring. You know, I would expect to see some folks from the department sitting in, sitting there with meetings and visiting farms rather than maybe inspecting farms in that sense, but being hand in hand, and then to see what kind of issues come up. And frankly, my reason and goal for doing this is we've seen these bills about every 2 years. There's a real strong movement for this local foods policies, and they're expanding to more and more towns. And well, maybe we could just take a little snapshot, set this up, watch it, evaluate it, and come back and then say, did it work, and where were the problems, and everybody could go forward from there. And I'm hoping it might save future pieces of legislation down the road.
Further questions for Senator Langley? Thank you, Senator, for taking the time to be here with us.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you letting me kind of cut in line.
All
Thank you, Senator.
Not seeing any other legislators here, and we'll begin with the list.
Yes. John Gandy.
Welcome back, John.
Thank you. This is what I get for being here early and putting my name first on the list. I have to go first. So, but anyway, thank you for the opportunity to come back and speak on this. Senator Edgecombe, Representative Hickman, and distinguished members of this committee, thank you for allowing me to speak again on this bill. My name is John Gandy still, and I am master of Halcyon Grange in Blue Hill. I come before you to represent the members of Halcyon Grange in support of LD 1376. The Grange, also known as the Patrons of Husbandry, was formed in 1874 as a vehicle for farmers to unite to find and implement solutions to problems facing the farming business. As a national, state, and local organization, the Grange gradually evolved into more of a community service and social organization. However, the members of Halcyon Grange have returned our local Grange to its agricultural roots. The pilot program proposed in this bill would ensure local control in establishing a council to establish best management practices and act as a governing board for local food production for direct sale to consumers. The local nature of the council will ensure that the interests of our local farmers and food producers are met, as well as that of the consumer. We feel that Halcyon Grange would be the natural choice to form the council and establish the pilot program along with advice and support of the 5 participating municipalities designated in the bill. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee on this issue, and I am happy to answer any questions.
John, was this bill discussed at the Grange meeting?
Yes, it was. In fact, we had a meeting last night and discussed all of these bills in detail and voted for me voted unanimously for me to come here representing your membership and support.
Okay, that was my next question. You had a unanimous vote from them in support.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Ward.
Welcome, Representative.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I missed the start. In two places at once right now. so.
That's fine. I'd like you to get here before the hammer comes down.
All right, thank you. Senator Edgecombe, Representative Hickman, and honorable members of the Agricultural, Conservation, and Forestry Committee. I am Representative Carl Ward, and I represent the good people of Maine House District 131, which includes the towns of Otis, Dedham, Orland, Penobscot, Prospect, Stockton Springs, and Verona Island. I appear before you today to indicate my support for LD 1376, an act to establish a local food producers and processors to consumers pilot program, being sponsored by my good friend Senator Brian Langley on my left. All across Maine, the local foods movement has taken hold and enjoys a spectacular growth. 13 individual communities have expressed a desire for food sovereignty. A recent Bangor Daily News poll recently indicated that nearly 80% of Mainers responding visit farmers markets regularly. Clearly, more Mainers are choosing to direct purchase farm fresh foods at the site of production. In fact, in certain parts of the state, like the Blue Hill Peninsula, which is part of my district, this renaissance has brought many young families to revive old farms and grow existing farms enough to lead a true economic revival there. The debate over free access to farm fresh foods has gone back and forth in the last few years, with the point of access and the desire for organically raised produce, as well as the need for food safety being debated. But that is not the debate today. Today, we attempt to take a step in solving some of the concerns heard in past debates by creating a limited, carefully monitored, and reported pilot program in a relatively small but farming-active region. If allowed, this program would lift licensure and inspection requirements on a very limited amount of food transactions, provided it is done face-to-face, it is packaged and labeled with the producer's name, the ingredients, and quantity, and is not sold for resale. But what this also does is it gives local farmers a chance to prove in a very transparent way that what they have asserted for some time, that their produce is safe, organic, affordable, and is in high demand. The relative success or failure of the program will be reported, and depending upon the outcome, the program could be eliminated, expanded, or remain the same. This bill is good, sound, and reasonable legislation. It seeks a middle ground compromise and a trial run. It's smart. It could truly lead to win-win, and it deserves your unanimous support. Thank you, and while I'm sure there are many speakers who will follow me and lend their expertise far better than I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Representative Ward? Seeing none, thank you for testifying.
Happy to support that.
And folks may notice that at least two people are missing from the committee because the ag budget is being discussed in appropriations, and they're there representing the committee today during that hearing. Who else?
Next up is Richard King.
Welcome again, Richard.
Thank you.
Representative Hickman and members of the committee. I believe that this bill simply kicks the can down the road, as we say, on the subject of local food sovereignty. Instead of simplifying the act of obtaining local food, it complicates it by adding yet another layer of bureaucracy, the Local Food Policy Council, to the process. It changes the department's license and inspect to advise and assist role. I can't help but think that visions of kitchens with wood cutting boards and milking parlors without fly-proof doors will dance in the department's head as the annual assessment report is prepared. What will be the status of those towns that have local food ordinances in place? Are they supposed to sit on their hands for the next 7 years while we decide if this is a good thing or a bad thing? I have no problem with having educational materials or seminars available for those who wish to take them. The department and the Extension Service provide invaluable information and should continue to do so. When someone chooses, as Maria and I did, to start raising dairy goats, there's an obvious need to learn as much as possible. Baking a cake for the library bake sale, is something most households know how to do, but making cheese is a different matter. One does not simply decide to make gloomy rind soft cheese without doing at least a little research. We've had 3 goats slaughtered and butchered in licensed facilities, and I've been less than pleased with the results. The fear that they, the goats, experienced prior to their deaths left a distinct flavor in the meat. With a lot of reading and the help of an experienced friend, I learned how to process my own animals in my barn. The fear is gone and the meat is wonderful. Last weekend I showed a visiting friend a goat I slaughtered the day before. It was aging in the temperature-controlled box that I built myself. He asked about the whole process, and I explained how and where I did it. His next question was, will you sell me some? Obtaining wholesome, local food is not something that requires a great deal more than good common sense and trust between sellers and buyers. It seems unnecessary to have a pilot program to study something that has been happening for millennia. I urge the committee to vote ought not to pass on LD 1376. Thank you.
So Richard, where you had your goats processed that you were less than happy with, what was the most important thing that you were displeased about?
Well, it was the taste of the meat. Goats can be goaty, and all of them were bucks. And the advice I got was never kill a buck. And the first 3 were pretty goaty. The first one that I slaughtered at home was also a buck, and he died very peacefully and was not afraid of anything. The 3 that went to the slaughterhouse spent a night in a strange place, surrounded by strange animals, strange noises, and I'm sure they were terrified. And I talked to a hunter about deer hunting, and he said that if you shoot a deer and you take it down with 1 shot and it's dead, it's great. But if it runs and you have to kill it somewhere else, the adrenaline and the chemicals in its system basically ruin the meat. And so
That's why they keep them at a slaughterhouse usually overnight, so forth, and keep them calm.
but goats are a lot smarter than we think they are, and they were just not happy. I mean, it was we could taste it in the meat.
And being a male, did it have something to do with that?
No,
No.
we've done
Like a boar hog.
several since then, and they've all been great, every one of them.
And we ate testicles.
Look out!
But that's true.
There are some delicacies involved.
Is Maria next on the list?
I yield the floor. Thank you very much.
All right. Maria, would you step forward, please? Well, we're still in for a treat. So, Maria, you have the mic.
Senator Edgecombe, Representative Hickman, honorable members of the committee. I am Maria King from Liberty, and I am against the bill 1376. Although after the presentation of the Representative Langley, I am not so certain that I am again, because I had the impression that he presented it differently as I understood from the text of the bill. It seemed to me that there would be more interference of Department of Agriculture, so I was against, but now it seems that rather the council would be responsible for what the farms are doing and not the Department of Agriculture. So I have mixed feelings. Pilot program, it seems to be upside down to me, but who am I to judge? Had Wyoming such pilot program before having declared their Food Freedom Act? I had a short experience with DACF, and it seems to me that their approach is outdated based on bad science, and they're chasing after single pathogens, sort of similar to medieval witch hunts, with the result of destroying farmers' livelihoods without any evidence of health damage caused to the farmers' customers. We had only one such case in Maine, Dan Brown, but many more nationwide. I think that DACF needs to relearn first before advising anyone. It would require to be DACF should be. It would require to be linked to independent specialists in nutrition to be instructed in lack of or diminished nutritional value and dangers of depleted foods and feeds. In permaculture, biodynamic and ecologic practices to be instructed in dangers of use of pesticides and genetically engineered foods, feeds, and seeds. In microbiology, to be instructed that a single pathogen is not a threat and that not all strains of potentially bad bacteria are pathogenic or virulent.
Maria, I want to remind you, I've stopped the clock for you just to tell you that, keep in mind that you only have 1 minute left and be sure
Okay.
you hit the important.
I don't know. Just say I should stop.
No,
No
you got
problem.
1 minute. Okay,
Okay.
go ahead.
There was already a relearning program at the University of Maine about 15 years ago. The scientists from the university developed organic farming methods for blueberry fields, urged to do so by a blueberry farmer. The program is run by Frank Drummond, professor of insect ecology, and David Yarborough, extension blueberry specialist and professor of horticulture. The same persons, however, continue beside the organic blueberry farming program a conventional one with use of harmful pesticides, claiming that their recommended dosage is safe. Maybe so, if properly used, but I know that they are reapplied after each rain. Ironically, the programs about protecting bees, for example, at both University of Maine and DACF, show a clear disconnect because protecting bees and any insects and any living organisms of soil, air, and water require banning pesticides and seeds modified with pesticides. Well, even being organic still opens a door for use of selected pesticides, therefore organic practices are not anymore what they were supposed to be in their origins, though the University Organic Blueberry experience could be useful in creating a relearning program for DACF inspectors, I guess.
Okay, excuse me, Maria, it did end. Any questions for Maria? Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Shaw.
You were never on this committee, right?
Yeah, no, I carefully avoided that. On criminal justice, which is, you know what that's like, and state and local government. I always admired all the work you all do is incredible.
Thank you for that.
As you probably may know, I'm not a farmer. My wife calls it soil, but I call it dirt.
She's correct, by the way.
That's it. I won't go and introduce myself again, but Senator Edgecombe. See, I'm so used to calling representatives. It goes way back.
I make that mistake, you know, I call Senator Dill representative once in a while. He excuses me.
Well, I apologize and congratulations for
Thank you.
standing here and Representative Hickman and honorable members of this committee. It's a privilege to be here. Those of us who have run for public office fully understand the importance of constituent opinion and support. In addition, we are sensitive to the social economic needs of our jurisdictions. Blue Hill's local food ordinance was passed in 2011. The passage was more than a symbolic expression of support for our farming community. It was a recognition of the care, skill, and oversight local food producers and processors invest in their farm-based businesses. Since 2011, 4 more towns in our area have passed similar ordinances for the same reasons. Clearly, there's a strong citizen report for the conceptual basis for these local food ordinances. However, until now, a vehicle that would create an element of governance over the activities enabled by these ordinances has been missing. This bill would encourage and enable the establishment of this missing piece. The pilot effort proposed in this bill will allow the creation of a council made up of stakeholders that are equipped with knowledge and authority to structure a governing board and that would assure the delivery of local agricultural products to customers using best practice approaches, and thus act to help assure the integrity and safety of products marketed in our towns. Another attractive feature of this bill is that it allows local council to assess the knowledge and resources of to access the knowledge and resources of the State Department of Agriculture as the need dictates. Further, the council and the department will have the opportunity to jointly design, this gets to Representative Chapman's question, jointly design the criteria by which the pilot will be evaluated. This collaboration should lead to an even stronger relationship between state and local efforts in the future. I know most of you understand the importance of the small businesses to our rural towns. Farm-based agriculture enterprises are a significant part of our economic landscape. Hence, it's incumbent upon us to do all we can to assure the vitality and success of these enterprises. Passage of this bill will send a message to those businesses and that their place in the state economy is valued. Finally, I'm certain that the components for successful implementation and this effort exist within the boundaries of our 5 towns. We have willing elected officials, motivated farmers, and interested customers. In addition, we have an active organization like the Halcyon Grange, which would perform a pivotal role in organizing and delivering the local food policy council. Thank you for this opportunity, and I welcome any questions.
Are you a Grange member?
I am.
Oh,
I was at the meeting last night. I'm one of the consumers, and I go to the suppers. That's where I do a lot of my consuming things. We won't talk about that.
Seeing no further questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bonnie, questions? And while she is handing in her testimony, is there anyone else in the room that would like to testify on LG 1376 that did not sign up? By show of hands. Okay.
Good afternoon, Chairman Edgecombe, Chairman Hickman, and members of the committee. I'm Bonnie Preston. I live in Blue Hill, and I'm testifying in support of LD 925, 1284, 1291, and LD 1376. I totally agree with Hendrik Gideon's testimony in support of all of today's bills. At the heart of his eloquent remarks is the concept of trust. I want to look for a moment at the opposite of trust, distrust, in explaining the one thing I would like to see change in LD 1376. And I'm speaking here as an eater who never purchases Capo beef. All of my meat comes from local farms that's been raised on pasture. I do trust Senator Langley. I trust his intentions with this bill and his sincere engagement with those of us on the side of food sovereignty. However, sadly, I do not trust the Maine Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, and I do not think they should have a leadership role in this project. I think they should offer advice and assistance only when requested by a local farmer or the local food policy council, and that it is especially important that they not set foot on a local farm without being invited by the farmer unless they have specific reason to suspect a problem on the farm as laid out in LD 925. The annual report called for in the bill should be written by the local food policy council. The DACF can comment on it when it is submitted to the legislature. The DACF is tied to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, which presents a classic case of corporate culture, or corporate capture. And I've attached a handout at the back of the testimony for you, showing the connections between the government and the Monsanto. That agency is loaded with big ag's lawyer lobbyists in decision-making positions. Everything they do is oriented toward the success of Monsanto, Cargill, Tyson, and the other monopolistic companies which feel threatened by the growth of the local food movement. It is easy to find many, many examples of FDA perfidy on both the drug and the food sides, by the way. The FDA and USDA are also lagging in seeing the benefits of ecological farming, which international agencies are promoting as the solution to many of the world's problems, from climate change to ending hunger. It is not surprising that the DACF is promoting FDA policies to the detriment of Maine's small farmers. Every state agency has to keep the federal level happy. It is disappointing, however, that they don't stand up for the small farmers in this state. For the 5 years we've been working on this issue, they've presented nothing but scare tactics about food safety without providing a shred of evidence that illness or death has originated from a small Maine farm. Last week they even said, although it is not in the written testimony, most of us heard them say it, that they oppose LD 73 because it may have negative effects on Maine's larger commercial farms.
Thank you, Bonnie. Could you explain the significance of the names that, I think you covered it, but once more, the overlapping?
Well, it's an overlap of the people who are working for Monsanto and their connections both ways with government agencies and,
Just like you
and
had.
officials. So it's,
Well, some of those names I do recognize.
yeah, Michael Taylor, for example, has been back and forth between Monsanto and the U.S. government and is responsible for writing the rules that are supposedly going to support the farm, the Food Safety Regulation Act. Those rules were written in a way that the department itself admitted would probably put half the small farmers in this country out of business, at least half of them.
You see, you even include the name of a presidential candidate.
Yes. Just as somebody mentioned that the support for this, all of this, these food sovereignty bills has been bipartisan, so has the connection to the corporate world been bipartisan.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Thank you, Bonnie. I believe you're the last person.
There's one.
Oh,
I just was